After using jade skin to unlock his gene lock, Han Sen had achieved super senses. For the bone elephant in particular, it allowed him to see through its head. He could faintly watch and trace the movements of the pink snake that swam around in its brain. Han Sen could feel the bone elephant's life force, and with this ability, he gauged the precise time he should cast his powerful attack.
Suddenly, Han Sen's pupils shrunk.
His body burst with power, like a raging scream. He struck the bone elephant's head with his fiery palms. Pang! The powerful elephant Rex strike was sent directly into the elephant's brain. It was like a torpedo in the deep sea, detonating the brain from the inside. Super creature hunted. Saint Bone Elephant. The beast's soul has not been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of super geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. You may also collect the life geno essence. As the announcement played in Han Sen's head, the pink snake launched out of the dead elephant's ear. It was like a star, falling into the forest. It disappeared. Han Sen saw traces of pink blood sprayed across the floor, so it looked like his palm had dealt it some decent damage. He was overjoyed. Because his fitness was not as high as it could be, the elephant Rex strike was only enough to mop up an easy kill. It wasn't strong enough to kill a super creature at full health, but Han Sen had damaged the thin pink snake, which prompted it to fly away. It was fairly obvious that the snake was heavily damaged. Perhaps it had already been injured during the scramble to get into the elephant's brain, or being in there the entire time. Regardless, it seemed to have run off for good. After all, the bone elephant was a second-generation super creature. Even if it did drill inside its body, the pink snake must have exhausted a lot of effort and strength to do so. Han Sen was just glad that the pink snake was spooked. The snake must have had no idea such a strike was coming. Only being able to perform such a strike once, it was fortunate the hit was as effective as it was. Otherwise, Han Sen might have had trouble making his escape. Han Sen quickly summoned his angel. He wanted to see if she'd eat the bone elephant, for perhaps this would be what it needed to evolve. Han Sen did not take the retrieval of beast souls as seriously as he used to. Obtaining them was no longer as important to him. His biggest priority lately was figuring out how he could consume the life geno essences. Angel saw the body of the Saint Bone Elephant, and when she saw it, her eyes glowed red. With a ravenous appetite, she leapt onto it. She grabbed its bones and began munching on them with a rabid hunger, the sounds of snapping cartilage ringing through the air. Snap, snap, snap. She broke the bones, sucked on the marrow, and crunched on the tusks like glass. Han Sen was frozen. He thought that the angel's teeth were a bit too hard. Watching her nibble her way through a mound of super creature bones was a little frightening. Han Sen summoned his flaming Rex spike and hit the elephant's skull with it, hoping to crack it open and obtain the life geno essence. That was all he personally needed. Nothing else mattered to him. But surprisingly for Han Sen, the bones were not as hard as he expected. It seemed that after the bone elephant's death, the bones softened somewhat. The Rex spike broke the top of the skull open like a piñata, letting out the run of white, creamy brain juice. Han Sen was rather shocked, but at least he understood how the angel was able to eat it so ferociously. After death, the elephant's bones really weren't all that hard. Han Sen drilled inside the brain for a while and rummaged through the muculent brain juice. After a fair amount of time, he managed to find the bone-like life geno essence he had been looking for. Han Sen was so happy. But during this happiness, he heard a sound from all around him. A sea of snakes were slithering towards him. It looked like the pink snake was not too fond of Han Sen's theft, and it seemed as if it had rallied its brethren to kill him. The pink snake was riding the back of another snake. This mount snake was a large titan boa. The pink snake was hissing at Han Sen with obvious anger and frustration. Han Sen felt bad, seeing the angel munch upon the bone elephant. It would probably take a long time for her to eat it all. But with Han Sen's current weakness, if the snakes attacked, he'd have no hope of repelling them all. He considered whether or not he should quickly grab the angel and escape, leaving behind the bone elephant's flesh in the process. But suddenly, he heard a bear roar. Looking to the top of the hill, he saw two bears, one big and one small, roaring in his direction. They rushed down the hill towards him, tearing up the legions of snakes in the process. Nothing could withstand their rabid claws. They stopped near the body of the bone elephant. Not entirely sure what was going on, Han Sen thought he should summon his wings and fly away. But the big black bear seemed really human. It nodded to Han Senator, and then the bear turned around and roared at the pink snake. The pink snake hissed in response. They both groaned and made noises to each other, staring one another down. After a while of this, the pink snake gave Han Sen one last jealous look before turning around and leaving alongside the rest of its snakes. The tide of snakes washed away. The big bear then roared to Han Senator. It picked up the cub, put it back on its back, and returned to the woods. Han Sen was shocked, not entirely sure what had just happened. How and why would the two bears come all the way over here just to repel the snakes that had threatened him? Did they think the reason I fought the bone elephant was because I wanted to help them? Was this them returning the favor? Han Sen didn't know for sure, but this was what he hypothesized. But regardless of why it had happened, it was a good thing. He had already decided to fly away with the angel and escape. This unexpected turn of events allowed the angel to munch on the elephant in its entirety. Han Sen sat on the floor and rested, observing the surrounding area. He wasn't simply taking in the view, though. He wanted to make sure the snake was gone for good and didn't plan on backstabbing Han Sen by coming back once the bear had left. But Han Sen was just being paranoid, and the pink snake made no plan to return. Han Sen's energy was also nearing complete recovery, without the sight of a single other creature around. The angel was still eating the bone elephant, and by now, she was almost halfway through her meal. The super creatures of the second god sanctuary are so human. The children, especially so. They are appearing more and more intelligent every time I see them. What will things be like when I reach the third god's sanctuary? Han Sen was in deep thought as he tossed the bone elephant's essence in his hand. It was a curious thing, like a fusion of bone and jade, but it was slightly transparent too. This life geno essence did not look violent and red, and it was a whole lot more like the peaceful bone elephant he had once witnessed sitting beneath a tree, meditating. It wasn't at all representative of the ordinary bone elephant he was used to seeing. I hope I can eat it this time. If I can't, I'm really out of solutions for how I might collect the super geno points I need. Han Sen gave the life geno essence a good lick. The result was disappointing. The life geno essence did not change. It was still as solid as ever. It did not melt, and it continued to look like bone. Han Sen didn't feel too disappointed. His heart had been preparing for this dreary result. After all, the golden roarer spat it out to him way back when, and this one had been dug out of the corpse of a dead super creature like all the rest. Han Sen was not sure what generation the golden roarer belonged to, so there was still some uncertainty there. Han Sen hadn't really expected licking it to work. He was just trying his luck. If it worked, that would have been great. But if it didn't, it was half expected anyway. Han Sen held onto the bone life geno essence and then used the Dongxian Sutra to simulate the bone elephant's flow. That thundering power rumbled across the insides of his body. Suddenly, he felt the life geno essence in his hands begin to follow the flow of the energy inside him. A rhythmic beat developed, and it followed every note and jump of the energy. This made Han Sen very happy, and he knew he had stumbled onto the correct path. He sped up the elephant's flow of energy, which made the life geno essence shake even more. Han Sen could feel the bone elephant's life geno essence provide him with a strange, foreign power. It seemed as if it was going to follow Han Sen's own energy and burst out. Han Sen simulated the bone elephant's energy flow again, but the energy inside the life geno essence did not burst out. He stuck his tongue out and licked the life geno essence again, but it did not melt. If I can activate the life geno essence, why can I not eat it?
Han Sen frov ned.
But Han Sen knew he was on the right path, and progress was being made. Otherwise, why would it have become active the way it did? He simply could not observe it because his simulation of the elephant was not powerful enough. After all, his Dongxian Sutra had not yet broken the first tier. It could not simulate things 1:1, and there were a few minor differences from the original creature. It looks like I need to finish up my first tier of the Dongxian Sutra. If I unlock the gene lock, I should be able to simulate the bone elephant's energy flow perfectly. If I do that, I must be able to absorb the life geno-essence. Han Sen believed he had at long last cracked the puzzle. He had found the way to absorb a life geno-essence. But for now, he still had to find a way to practice and finish up his Dongxian Sutra. He wanted to speed up his training of the Dongxian Sutra, and his best chance at doing that was with the peaches from the mystic peach tree. Perhaps in 2 months, the peaches would ripen. But the super creatures in the peach forest, like the pink snake, might prove an obstacle, and Han Sen was unsure whether or not he could steal from them again. If this is the way it has to be, then that means I have to absorb the second or third generation life geno-essences of super creatures. And before I kill them, I must have an understanding of their energy flow. If I don't get a grasp of that, there's no point in killing them. And to kill a first-generation creature? Well, that would be even more pointless. Han Sen furrowed his brow. Although the first-generation life geno-essences must possess another method of absorption, Han Sen had already had one breakthrough for the day. For now, he would focus on what he had just figured out before working on the next conundrum. If Han Sen wanted to look for a second-generation super creature to spit out a life geno-essence for him, such luck wouldn't strike for another 1,000 years, most likely. As much as he would have liked it, Han Sen did not expect this to happen again during his tenure in the Second God Sanctuary. Therefore, Han Sen thought to focus on hunting the second or third generations of super creature for now and earn the points he wanted. Should I kill the silver fox and eat his flesh? That guy is definitely a second-generation super creature.
Han Sen vore an evil smile.
But it was just a thought, nothing more. There were many second-generation super creatures out there in the Second God Sanctuary, just waiting to be found. It would not be necessary for him to kill the silver fox, and as the fox had been a diligent pet for so long, he'd feel terrible doing that. There was the little black cub, though. But if he wanted to go after that super creature, it'd be 2-on-1. That would be too much for him to handle. Red pony? Han Sen thought back to the legion of Pegasi and the wolf pack that aided each other, then quickly dropped that thought, as well. 8 small snow turtles? He didn't even need to think about that one. He would be better off taking a suicide pill than going up against a family of super creatures. Han Sen felt chilled just thinking about the 9 super creatures there. It looks like I need to get out there and look for more solo second-generation super creatures, Han Sen thought to himself as he stroked his jaw. While Han Sen was perusing the various chambers and hallways of his mind, the angel had finally finished her meal. She returned to the Sea of Soul, and that was when Han Sen saw the angel shine with neon lights. She had evolved into her battle variant. She's evolving. My super battle pet is born, yay. Fighting super creatures should be much easier from this day onwards. Han Sen was beaming with delight. He quickly left the peach forest, not wanting to stay there any longer than he had to. The next time he returned, he decided, would be when the peaches were ripe. Now that Han Sen knew how to absorb life geno-essences and his angel was going to be born anew, it'd be easier for him to nab a peach from the giant, mystic peach tree. The angel would most likely finish her evolution before they were ripe, as well. With a super fighter like that at his side, Han Sen was sure that he could grab at least one peach for himself. Back in the shelter, Han Sen was no longer in a rush to return to the ice field. He brought Su Xiaoqiao and Qi Wenjiao out to kill some more creatures. He wanted to train and push their survival abilities here in the Second God Sanctuary, allow the angel to finish her evolution, and wait for the peaches to ripen in the peach forest. Brother Long, we are ready. Should we head out now? In a royal shelter to the north, Cheng Yulong excitedly reported to Huang Yunlong. Have your preparations been double-checked? Have you confirmed that the life geno-essence is on Han Sen's person?
Huang Yunlong squinted, émitting à sinister, evil aura.
Huang Yunlong had been a king of the north for 60 years. His wealth was practically unlimited, and his strength far exceeded the capabilities of Lu Hui, who had only become famous a few years before. He had many strong subordinates, as well. Our intel is not incorrect. It cannot be. Those we have planted in the goddess shelter have seen it, and they have seen Han Sen carry it around with him. He has not absorbed it yet, Cheng Yulong said. Good. Rally all our troops. I am going to relieve Han Sen of the life geno-essence. Huang Yunlong's eyes were full of cruelty. Do not worry, Brother Long. This time, we will all strike together. With a dozen elites who have unlocked their gene lock, and with your help, Han Sen will be very, very dead. Chung Yulong gave many confident nods as he spoke. Remember, try to cover our tracks as best as you can. We cannot allow anyone to know we have vacated our northern premises for a time. We cannot afford to spook him, Huang Yunlong said, as he continued to squint. I have made arrangements. Even Lu Hui won't expect us to be there. By the time he suspects something is afoot, we will already have killed Han Sen and taken his life geno essence. Chung Yulong laughed. Let's head out. Huang Yunlong trusted Chung Yulong's abilities fully, for he had never disappointed him once across the years. A few days passed, and the angel had already evolved. When it wasn't in battle mode, it didn't look different. It was still the black-haired lowly. But when her battle mode was engaged, she was totally different. She had blonde wavy hair, and she wore armor that looked like jade. Even her wings looked jade. The Adiraid looked really holy, and it was difficult to look her in the eye. The strange thing was that the Adiraid wielded a transparent greatsword. It was similar to the one that Han Sen first saw her use when they met on the Mystery Island. The only difference was that this looked far stronger. A pet beast soul can end up looking like this?
Han Sen vondered, in ave.
This was the first time he had ever seen something like this. Han Sen soon realized, however, that the greatsword was not simple like a gear item. A piece of gear could not be put inside the Sea of Soul, and the greatsword disappeared when the Adiraid exited her battle mode. It was not some ordinary gear. Seeing the Adiraid in her battle mode, like some glorious Valkyrie, Han Sen was ecstatic. The mere presence of the Adiraid was intimidating enough for others. Its strength could not be any less than a super creature's, either, that was for sure. You are finally here, Han Sen said, with tears in his eyes. He wanted to kiss the Adiraid. With the Adiraid by his side, he no longer had to fear super creatures. He could enter battle with them, guns ablazing, without a care in the world. But now, Han Sen's focus was not on killing super creatures. He wanted to quickly finish the first tier of the Dongxian Sutra and see if he could absorb the bone elephant's life geno essence. If things were how he had guessed, Han Sen would have to be selective of the super creatures he chose to do battle with in the future. Otherwise, there'd be no point in fighting them. On the next red morning, Han Sen was sitting on a hill while he practiced the Dongxian Sutra. He had practiced half a cycle when his eyebrows jumped up with the sudden sensation of approaching danger. But Han Sen did not panic, so he maintained his practice of the Dongxian Sutra, even as 12 people encircled him. Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulong had exerted a lot of effort in the formulation and execution of their plan of assassination. They thought they'd need to commit to a big fight if they were going to surround Han Senator, but they were able to walk right up to him, all while he remained sitting and basking in the red morning light. Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulong were almost unable to believe how smoothly their operation seemed to be going. They thought an elite like Han Sen would detect them from 100 meters away, and the fact that he did not run away surprised them even more. Han Sen, we meet at last. With everything going so smoothly, Huang Yunlong was pleased.
Han Sen ignorered him.
He was finishing his big cycle of the Dongxian Sutra. When it was done, he opened his eyes to see a dozen people surrounding him, one of which was Huang Yunlong. Who are you? Han Sen observed everyone and ended up on Huang Yunlong. He asked the question as he stood up. I am from the Cloud Dragon shelter in the north. I am Huang Yunlong. Huang Yunlong proudly introduced himself. What do the northern folks want from me then?
Han Sen asked calmly.
Oh, nothing big. I am just requesting that I purchase your life geno essence, Huang Yunlong said, smiling. How much are you willing to pay?
Han Sen responded.
How much? Cheng Yulong almost burst out laughing. He thought Han Sen must have been retarded to ask such a question in the situation he was in. That much? Cheng Yulong pulled out his wallet and threw a small 10,000 note at Han Sen's face, laughing. He would have liked to throw out an even smaller note, but as wealthy as he was, that was the smallest he had. Nah, it's worth more than that, Han Sen calmly replied, with no deviation in his emotion. He was not mad at all. He didn't dare announce he had gotten super geno points before, because he knew others would come after him. Now that the cat was out of the bag, It hadn't been long before someone sought to bring him harm, all for retrieving the life Geno essence he owned. The formation was fairly big. There were a dozen people, each with an imposing, intimidating presence. They weren't ordinary evolvers. If he was able to bring that many strong fighters to battle Han Sen, he had to be a man that possessed a lot of power. He also had to be a man that was cruel, the sort who struck with absolutes and assurances of death. The worth of the item is not up to you to decide. If I want to buy it off you, you will have to sell it and accept the price that I propose. Huang Yunlong looked callous. He didn't say much else. He then simply gestured with his hand, signaling for a dozen fighters to unlock their gene locks and run towards Han Sen. Clearly, they wanted to kill Han Senator, and that was all they needed to do, if they desired to own the life Geno essence. The life Geno essence could not be placed in the Sea of Soul, and neither could Han Sen consume it. It was up for grabs. Although Han Sen knew they were strong, he hadn't expected they had all unlocked their gene locks. With power like this, the man was doing pretty well for himself in the Second God's Sanctuary. Without aid from the big families and prominent alliance organizations, it was difficult to gather a dozen elites with unlocked gene locks. In the past, Han Sen would have believed it difficult to fight these assaulters. After all, he only had 2 fists. Being surrounded by a dozen elites with unlocked gene locks, getting out alive would be difficult. But now things were different. Now, he had his battle adorade. Super pets had the potential to be as strong as super creatures. No matter how strong these elites were, if they could not kill a super creature, they could not kill an adorade. Seeing that these cruel people wanted to murder him, Han Sen did not respond any further. All he did was summon his adorade. The adorade wielded a great sword as she flapped her wings. It was like a holy goddess. Appearing in front of Han Senator, she coldly looked at Huang Yunlong and his people. Huang Yunlong saw the adorade and was shocked. They thought Han Sen was only summoning a spirit, as humanoid pets were very rare. They never expected this, but they did not understand why Han Sen was summoning a spirit. If it was a royal spirit, it was nothing to them. Even spirits could not fight that many talented fighters. It wouldn't last a second. If Han Sen was using a spirit to buy himself time to escape, he was too naive. Although Lu Hui was only leader of the Blue Blood Forces reserve team, it was still a lofty position, representative of his abilities. Huang Yunlong had done his best to hide his people's presence, but when they entered Lu Hui's territory, they did not go unnoticed. Lu Hui was intelligent enough to determine what they had come for. It had to be something as valuable as Han Sen's life Geno essence, for Huang Yunlong to risk everything. Lu Hui knew Han Sen was currently in his territory, but he wasn't in a rush to meet and greet with him. He knew that for people like Han Sen, such gestures meant very little. Actions spoke louder than words. But for the time Han Sen was there, Lu Hui was unable to find the opportunity to do something meaningful on his behalf. That was, until Huang Yunlong's arrival. Lu Hui enlisted a few of his top men and went near where Han Sen was spending the morning. He did not rush there to meet Han Sen or say anything. He just waited. People were at their most appreciative when they were desperate. Lu Hui planned to wait until Han Sen found himself surrounded by Huang Yunlongs, then spring an attack that would save his life. Such a bold action would be far more cherished and appreciated than if he were to simply tip Han Sen off to a coming assassination attempt. Lu Hui and his people lay in wait in a nearby forest. When he saw Huang Yunlong had brought a dozen evolvers with unlocked gene locks to murder Han Sen, he was shocked. He had brought a terrible power, and Lu Hui imagined that Huang Yunlong must have emptied the entire strength of his territory to fell Han Senator. He was so desperate. He was willing to risk everything to obtain the life Geno essence. Lu Hui furrowed his brows and took a look around him, pondering whether or not he had brought enough people. Just as Lu Hui was planning to run to Han Sen's side and defend him, he saw he had summoned an adorade. When Lei Hingwu laid his eyes upon it, he was taken aback. With much surprise, he said, "No way he will use that spirit to beat them, right?" The next second, the adorade moved. As the dozen warriors sought to attack, the adorade flapped her wings and took off into the air. She flew to the man who was nearest and attacked with her transparent greatsword. The man was wielding a great lance, and his body was heating up, emitting a white fog. He was an evolver who could control the element of heat. But the Adiraid was too fast, and she frightened him. He held up his lance to block her attack. The Adiraid looked cold, like a goddess that was pure and free from even the smallest speck of dust. She brought down her fierce greatsword. Slash! The man and the lance were both cut in half by the ferocious greatsword. Blood and organs fell all about, but not a single droplet touched the Adiraid. Under the morning light, the Adiraid still looked the same. As evil as she appeared and acted, she seemed to be graced with a holy, angelic look, too. In that brief moment, every other evolver was suddenly petrified. Huang Yunlong, Cheng Yulong, Lu Hui, and Lei Hingwu were frozen stiff. No one expected an elite, who had unlocked their gene lock, to be killed in such a grisly fashion. It happened so unexpectedly, it gave them all the heebie-jeebies. A second later, the Adiraid flapped her wings again. Her beautiful body soared through the air and teleported before another fighter. She weaved her greatsword up, effortlessly. The fighter was clad in heavy armor, and he bore a great shield. When he saw the Adiraid's sword coming for him, he yelled and raised his bulwark to deflect the attack. Slash! The thick great shield was hewn in half, and the gentle wind caressed the evolver's head on its ascent and subsequent descent, free from the shoulders it once belonged to.
Impossible.
Huang Yunlong's eyes opened wide. His face was distorted with horrific surprise, and fear crept into his heart to lay its first tangling, choking roots. The man who used the shield was called Dooku. He had a skill called Platinum Body. When he opened his gene lock, his body would harden like platinum. With sacred blood armor and shield, his defense was unmatched. He was one of the strongest amongst the evolvers, yet he had been beheaded in less than a moment's notice. Even his armor and shield had been reduced to splinters, much to the fright of everyone who witnessed it. Cheng Yulong and the others all knew how powerful Dooku was. After seeing such a person be slain so easily, the fear that was beginning to grip the hearts of everyone accelerated. No one could believe Dooku had been killed in such a fashion, and even Lu Hui and Lei Hingwu were in as much shock and awe as those who now had to face the wrath the Adiraid. The spirit's capabilities were far beyond what anyone had expected of it, and never before had they been so wrong. Oh my days! Is that truly just a spirit? Lei Hingwu blurted out with widened eyes. No could answer him. Powerful spirits did exist, but rarely did humans get the chance to see them. They had never seen spirits swear vows either. No one expected Han Sen to be in possession of a spirit as terrifying as that. Retreat! Retreat! Huang Yunlong did not wait any longer, as he turned around and sought to flee. The thing that looked like an angel was far stronger than he expected it to be. It was scarier than a super creature, and his chance of killing Han Sen had quickly dropped to zero. Before Huang Yunlong barked his order, however, everyone had already started running. They all wished that they could grow more legs, so they could skitter away with greater ease. They were lucky to be alive, facing such a fearsome creature. They were elites who had survived many battles and encounters of terrifying proportions over the years. A few of the evolvers had followed Huang Yunlong for many years, too. They once conducted operations that dealt with the hunting of super creatures. But the Adiraid was scarier than any creature they had faced before. When they chased super creatures, they conducted and orchestrated the battles. Fights were selected because they were the hunters. But the angel-looking woman had human intelligence and skill, and this time, they were the prey. They were frightened beyond belief. Now gutless, they did whatever they could to scramble away and free themselves from it. Han Sen could use his mind to control the Adiraid. She flapped her wings and caught up with Cheng Yulong. His face drained of its color entirely, and he regretted the way he had mocked Senator Han Sen was getting him back for his spite, which was why he was the first to be chased down. Cheng Yulong's body burst with power, and he tried to evade the Adiraid's strike. It was to no avail, however. He was sliced in two. Before his death, all he could do was whimper. There was no death cry or final words. Han Sen had taken away those rights. The Adiraid angel did not stop there, however. Under Han Sen's command, she went after Huang Yunlong. Han Sen did not care who he was. He did not care about his family or background. Han Sen wanted to send a message to everyone in the alliance. He wanted to tell them all that if they messed with him, they would end up dying gruesome deaths. Huang Yunlong was the North's champion and top human evolver. Not even Han Sen could beat him easily. But before the Adiraid, his persona had shriveled to that of a fleeing scoundrel. The Adiraid caught up with him easily. A few cuts and slices removed his armor. Then, his helmet was removed, which came terrifyingly close to taking his scalp off along with it.
Han Sen.
I have no grudge with you. If you let me go now, I'll appreciate it. If you don't let me go, my blood legion will most likely avenge me. Huang Yunlong, in between his evasions and pleas, screamed and yelped as he tried to escape. Han Sen frowned, as he had heard about the blood legion before. When humans first entered their interstellar era, they experienced many unique events and encountered a variety of different species. It provided a great expansion to humanity's understanding of life and their own existence. This also led to the forming of different religions and dogmas. The Blood Legion was one of those religious organizations. Han Sen had heard that the Blood Legion was responsible for one of the Alliance's greatest events. It took lethal force to suppress them, and they were branded a cult. They were supposedly wiped out, without a trace. But in the past 100 years, the Blood Legion's popularity had been on the rise once more. A lot of people had been contacted by missionaries of the supposed Blood Legion in a recruitment spree. Their activities had been viewed negatively, and over the past few years of their resurgence, many people had died for their allegiance to the cult. Many others did not lose their lives, but instead, their possessions, wealth, and social standing. Everything that defined who they once were was nullified after becoming a member. Han Sen did not expect Huang Yunlong to have ties with the Blood Legion, but that did not change anything. No matter who he was, Han Sen had to end him. If he didn't cut the head off this snake, people would assume Han Sen was soft, and others might try their hand at coming after him as well. Han Sen decided to live like a man. Huang Yunlong was responsible for the events of the day. He wanted Huang Yunlong's death to warn others who might one day seek to do the same. Huang Yunlong shouted, but Han Sen did not care. He just coldly watched as the Adiraid sliced him, cutting him down bit by bit. Huang Yunlong was quite the elite, and after 30 slashes, he had yet to fall. Even Han Sen was not much stronger than him. But facing the Adiraid, Huang Yunlong had no chance. Death would be the only resolution to his encounter with it. His wounds slowed him down, and what happened next was inevitable. His head was lopped off. He didn't even have the time to close his eyes before he was beheaded. His open eyes spoke to the way he felt in the final moments before his death. He was angry, and he did not feel that what was happening to him was fair. Lu Hui and Lei Hongwu were frozen as they watched. The Northern Master, Huang Yunlong, who had reigned the North for 60 years, was cut down just like that. And a dozen evolvers who had opened their gene locks were fought off by an angel-looking creature under the command of Han's senator. Only 6 managed to escape her wrath. Han Sen did not even have to dirty his hands. The angel-looking creature had delivered the frightening results he desired on his behalf. What the hell is that thing? Lei Hongwu was flabbergasted. He was unable to determine whether or not the Adiraid was indeed a spirit. Even if it was, he didn't believe it would follow the commands of any human. In the red morning light, the Adiraid looked like a holy figure, tainted with an evil corruption. Let's go. Lu Hui commanded his people to leave. He was worried that if they remained there, Han Sen might misunderstand the meaning of their presence. If Han Sen believed they were with Huang Yunlong, they wouldn't end up any better. The angel-looking creature was far too scary. For the people that had run off a great distance, Han Sen did not command the Adiraid to follow. He then looked in Lu Hui's direction. After that, he went to scavenge and see what he might find on the ghastly remains of those who had been slain. Nothing. Most of them had a little coin pouch, with some money and their cards inside. But that was it. Han Sen had a look at Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulong's cards. In between them, he saw the symbol of the 9-life cat. Blood Legion. Is there any connection between it and the 9-life cat? Han Sen's facial expression was complicated, unsure whether or not this was just a coincidence. But Han Sen had never heard of the Blood Legion making use of the 9-life cat as some form of symbol. He did remember that the Blood Legion believed in the blood god, however. It was a god that could control the blood power of creatures. Aside from Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulong, none of the others had the same card. Han Sen then set up a pyre. After burning all the corpses, he left. The battle in which Huang Yunlong had been killed in his attempt to assassinate Han Sen shocked the whole alliance. Because of the life Geno essence, many people had kept their eye on Han Senator. No one had expected Huang Yunlong would have been the first to try to take it. A lot of other factions felt relieved. Many had made plans to do the same as Huang Yunlong did, and they were glad that he had attempted such a thing first. If they went, they'd only have traded places and been the ones who were killed instead. The creature that looks like an angel, is that a spirit? If it was a spirit, then it'd be indestructible. It'd be 1,000 times harder than hunting down a super creature, for sure. How did Han Sen come to have something such as that in his possession? Many factions and organizations were shocked, and they fervently tried to guess what the angel might have been. Most of them believed it was a beast soul, while a few continued thinking it was a spirit. No matter what it was, however, everyone knew that with such a creature by his side, Han Sen was invincible in the second god's sanctuary. Unless someone had the most flawless assassination plan, killing him would be impossible. What happened to Huang Yunlong alarmed everyone. A lot of people who were planning on assassinating Han Sen now realized that doing it in a shelter was impossible. Killing him in the alliance would be the only way. But to attack Han Sen in the alliance would be difficult. Everyone believed Han Sen to be from the Ji family. He was also with the Special Security Operation Team, which had deep ties to the Qin family. With a background like that, most attacks against him would be useless. After Han Sen returned, he contacted Ji Yinran. He told her she could be in charge of the Frosty Bear Life Geno Essence. He had been unable to absorb the Life Geno Essence so far, so it was pointless for him to keep it right now, particularly since all it did was draw the jealousy and ire of others. If Han Sen gave it to the Ji family, people would know that he could not absorb the Life Geno Essence, and it would hopefully prevent them from bothering him. He wasn't afraid of fighting, but assassination attempts were difficult to avoid. In the alliance, he was not invincible. There was no point in being killed for an item that was worthless to him. Han Sen did want to know if there was any way to absorb the Life Geno Essence. However, with his own knowledge and wealth, his ability to perform tests and experiments was limited. Therefore, providing it to the Ji family was the best course of action. He thought about selling the first-generation Life Geno Essences he could not absorb to others. Such items would most likely be useless to them as well, but at least he'd earn a lot of cash. Daddy, you sure have a lot of free time recently. Ji Yinran smiled at Ji Ruojan's image on the video chat. I can't help it. My future son-in-law is far too talented. Ji Ruojan looked like he was joking. What has he done now? Ji Yinran blinked to look as if she didn't know, despite the fact Han Sen had already told her. Didn't he tell you? He used a spirit to beat a dozen elites and Huang Yunlong, Ji Ruojan said. I only heard he used a humanoid pet beast soul to kill a bunch of thieves that sought to rob him, Ji Yinran said, smiling. Thieves, huh? Ji Ruojan smiled and asked her, baby daughter, did you ask him what level his beast soul is? Super beast soul, Ji Yinran replied with certainty. So, it is a super beast soul? Ji Ruojan had already guessed that much, but he was still taken aback to hear it confirmed. For Han Sen to have a beast soul like that, he had to have killed at least one other super creature. It was hard not to be surprised by it. The Ji family spent a lot of wealth to fund the killing of just one super creature, and that was in the first god's sanctuary. Han Sen had killed at least 2 super creatures in the second god's sanctuary, all by himself. This was the sort of goal many families had been vying to achieve over the past few generations. Having a super pet and raising it to a battle mode was a far better investment than Ji Qing's super armor. The boon of power Han Sen had received would work exceptionally well when facing off against other super creatures in the future. With that super pet by his side, Han Sen was sure to kill many more super creatures from now on. And Ji Qing's super armor hadn't lent her much aid. Overall, did Han Sen tell you how many super creatures he has actually killed? Ji Ruojan asked. He has killed 2 in total. Ji Yinran only told her father what Han Sen had told her. Han Sen had placed the kill of the Deadeye Peacock on the little angel. Ji Ruojian sighed and said, I thought Ji Qing was lucky, but Han Sen's luck far exceeds hers. That super pet just evolved into battle mode, and Han Sen hasn't brought her to fight any other super creatures yet. Huang Yunlong's death came at what was practically her first trial run.
Yi Yanran left.
She continued by saying, Oh, and Han Sen said he will provide us with the Frosty Bear's essence. And what are the conditions of such an offering? Ji Ruojian asked. Dad, don't say that. Why would there be any conditions or strings attached? He only said that it was a gift for me, and I can do whatever I want with it.
Yi Yanran blinket.
There really aren't any conditions? Ji Ruojian asked again, with much surprise. There aren't. But because he's been so good to your daughter, you can't allow yourself to be in his debt, Ji Yanran slyly suggested, acting all cute. This Han Sen is a smart guy. I'll give him that. Giving it to you as a gift will undoubtedly benefit him more than if he were to sell it to us. Ji Ruojian smiled and finished by saying, he has very good judgment to think this way. He is not someone who hankers for a little profit every chance he gets. I know. I'm not blind. You didn't think I'd pick a fool, did you? Ji Yanran smiled and proceeded to say, Han Sen told me he'll be staying in the ice field, and that we can come pick up the life Geno essence whenever we want. Sure. You tell little Han that the Ji family does not accept charity, and things aren't accepted without something given in return. I'll go back and have a talk with your uncle. We'll give Han Sen a reasonable reward for this gift. Fret not. Ji Ruojian then paused for a bit before asking, Oh, and tell little Han that the Ji family is formally requesting the opportunity to cooperate and hunt a super creature together, in unison. If he is interested, I'm sure we'll have much to discuss. And in regards to that other life Geno essence, Han Sen agreed to sell it to the Qin family, Ji Yanran answered immediately. The Qin family? Ji Ruojian lowered his head to think for a bit, and then continued by saying, Not bad. He's got his head screwed on right. He sure knows what he's doing. Ji Yanran did not lie. Han Sen was indeed planning on selling it to the Qin family. After all, he could not absorb the life Geno essence of a first-generation super creature, and holding on to it would just make others jealous. He would also maximize the profit he could receive by selling it as early as possible. Han Sen was a part of the Special Security Operation Team, and it looked after his family. Considering his relationship with Qin Xian, he was almost obligated to sell it to the Qin family. The news of the sale of the 2 life Geno essences, and the fact he was in possession of a super pet, became well-known facts in the alliance. A lot of key officers and faction officials were rocked by the news. A lot of people who knew Han Sen in a closer capacity were asked about him. Did he have more life Geno essences? Would he be willing to cooperate? Maybe even help hunt a super creature? Han Sen's answer, of course, was no. He rejected all requests and remained in the shelter, refusing to go anywhere. All he did was practice his Dongxian Sutra while waiting for the peaches to ripen. Even though he was in the goddess shelter, Han Sen still felt the itch of numerous eyes watching him wherever he went. He supposed that was the price of being famous. But overall, Han Sen cared little. A month later, the season for the peaches to ripen had fast approached. Han Sen summoned Beetle Knight to camouflage himself while he was in the shelter, so he could sneak out unseen. The whole world was paying heed to Han Sen's every movement. Having a super pet made him the focus of everyone. No one would miss a beat when it came to his wheeling and dealing, coming and going. This was especially true when it came to the fighting of super creatures. If Han Sen was seen hunting a super creature, countless people would visit him, using a flurry of stretched excuses for why he should sell a life Geno essence to them. Han Sen did not mind selling them, but he did not want to sell them to just anyone. Regardless, this was primarily why he chose to sneak out without leaving a trace for others to follow. To get the mystic fruit from the giant peach tree in the peach forest, Han Sen brought the silver fox and the little angel. He wanted to grab a peach to see if he could unlock the first tier of the Dongxian Sutra. Entering the peach forest once more, Han Sen had far more courage. Even if the pink snake brought an army with him, he was confident he could slay them all, with the silver fox and little angel by his side. But nothing of the sort happened. The silver fox's presence shooed off any creatures along the way, which disappointed Han Senator. He was looking forward to the possibility of slaying a host of sacred blood snakes, so he could gobble them up and get closer to maxing out his sacred Geno points. But for some reason, the pink snake and its legion of slithering serpents did not appear until he had arrived at the giant tree. The legion of snakes had gathered all around the mystic peach tree. Han Sen also saw the black bear and its cub there. A blue beast and a crane of sorts were there, as well. Every creature he had encountered at the tree the last time, minus the bone elephant, were here at the tree once again. Han Sen's arrival was not without trouble, however. His coming led to unrest with the pink snake and its legion. And indeed, the legion of snakes did not disperse with the silver fox's coming. As Han Sen arrived, all of the snakes lifted their heads, as if to warn Han Sen not to tread any closer. The pink snake was sat upon the Titan boa as it once did. It stared at Han Sen with cold, poisonous eyes. It was evident it had not forgotten who he was. But for some reason, the pink snake avoided Han Sen and did not attack. This behavior surprised him. The black cub, on the other hand, looked delighted to see Han Senator in surprise. It ran out to Han Sen's feet, ignoring the legion of snakes. With a little observation, Han Sen noticed that the cub had grown in size since the last time it met. It had grown up fast. When the cub reached Han Sen, it ran in circles and sniffed around him. Then, it signaled for Han Sen to sit next to the big bear. Han Sen, taking a look at the peach tree, noticed that there weren't any peaches on it yet. He watched it for a while, but then, after some time, noticed two peaches manifest between the green leaves. They were about the size of ostrich eggs. The peaches were red on the bottom and pale on the top. They looked as if they were moments away from ripening. Such a giant tree only produced two peaches? Han Sen looked to his left and right, and indeed, the mystic peach tree had only produced two peaches. One was hanging at the tip of the twig, and the other was a little further up. The super creatures that had gathered there all looked up at the peaches. The little angel and the silver fox were almost as powerful as the two bears, in comparison. Han Sen alone could almost equate to the power of the silver fox, and he wagered he could beat at least two super creatures to the punch of nabbing the peaches. Han Sen then took a look at his competition: pink snake, blue beast, crane, little bear, and big bear. There were 5 super creatures, and against the legion of snakes there, it'd be difficult to take the peaches. Han Sen went near the big bear, which sat away from the peach tree. Strangely enough, none of the super creatures sought to go close to the tree. They circled it, almost as if there was a radius they had to be outside of. This confused Han Senator, seeing 2 peaches on the tree, with one at the end of the twig and the other a little above. They both shone like a fruit from heaven's very own orchard. They emitted a pleasant smell, a smell even nicer than the smell of the peach flowers. But despite the tantalizing prospect of the peaches being right there for the taking, no creature dared make a move. It was like they weren't in a rush to take them. The black bear was lying on the ground of the peach forest, but it looked up, seemingly focused on the 2 peaches. But look is all it did, and it most certainly did not appear ready to take them. The pink snake and the blue beast looked the same way. The crane was perched on a nearby peach tree, but still away from the mystic giant tree. The cub continued to circle Han Sen, but then stopped to stare at the silver fox that was resting on Han Sen's shoulder. It seemed really interested in the creature, as it couldn't stop staring. Strange. Those peaches are going to ripen. So why are they keeping their distance? Shouldn't they each be vying for it right now? Aren't they afraid of someone else stealing it? Han Sen stared at the mystic peach tree and began to feel as if something was wrong. He used Jade Skin to unlock his gene lock and heighten his senses. Although he did not have the 8th sense yet, his senses and perceptions still exceeded that of the super creatures. Han Sen used his new sensory functions to inspect the peach tree, and his face looked horrified. Through the use of his heightened senses, he noticed there was something wrong with the mystic peach tree. On the tree there was something really small, but it was something alive that moved around. In fact, there were many of them, and they were moving all over. When observing the twig that held the peaches, Han Sen could see them crawling around like ants. Just seeing it made his head itch. Bugs? Why are there so many strange bugs on the tree? Han Sen was shocked. The bugs were so small, Yet the tree was huge. They dug underneath the bark of the tree, and with average eyesight, you could not tell they were there through simple observation. If it wasn't for Han Sen's sense, he wouldn't have noticed their presence even if he went to stand directly in front of the tree. What are those bugs? Even the super creatures are avoiding them. They don't even dare to go close.
Han Sen frov ned.
Han Sen was positive the last time he was here at the tree, there were no bugs. Otherwise, he'd have known about them coming here. He was practicing Dongxian Sutra for a long time beneath the boughs of that great tree, so there was no way he had managed to avoid sensing them during that time. Strange. Where did all these bugs come from? There is no way they can be super creatures, can they? But why are the super creatures scared of them? And why do they avoid going near the tree? Han Sen mulled the peculiar situation. Han Sen then remembered the time he got Princess Inyang. She informed Han Sen about the nature of the sacred blood class silver beetle mother. Perhaps the bugs weren't all too different to the silver beetle. She explained that the smaller silver beetles were little more than weapons, created by the mother. They weren't actual living creatures. If these bugs were able to make the super creatures that scared, the mother of the bugs may have been a super creature as well. If this is true, that's bad news. A super creature that can produce countless smaller insects will be a terrifying foe. I shudder at the thought. Han Sen then sensed the ground, but his abilities were still a little limited as he had yet to fully unlock the eighth sense. Therefore, he could not find out what was going on beneath the earth. Unable to ascertain where the mother might be, Han Sen returned his gaze to the smaller bugs on the tree. They were inside the bark, eating it. Although they did not eat much, it was still a shocker to see. The mystic peach tree was something sacred. It was something that even the super creatures greatly admired. It was a surprise to see these bugs eat and desecrate it like so. Han Sen, being unable to figure out what the bugs were, was just like the bears now. He remained motionless, staring at the tree, not daring to get close. They just waited until it was ripe. A few days later, the peach on the upper reaches of the twig had already turned jade. Strangely, it emitted a red mist. A holy presence emerged from the peach like jade, as well. The scent was carried by the wind, coating the next few hundred miles with its pleasing fragrance. The lower peach was different than the upper peach. The lower peach was mostly green and pale, and only a little bit red. It looked like it would still take some time for it to mature. The legion of snakes was getting anxious and annoyed. In their impatience, they started to approach the peach tree, ever so slowly. The pink snake was riding the head of a titan boa, which flew in circles of further impatience. It looked as if it wanted to launch itself onto the upper peach, which looked as if it was almost ripe. But it didn't yet. It showed restraint due on account of its fear. The blue beast, resting on the branch of a tree, jumped down. It walked forward and stared at the upper regions of the tree, where the peach hung. Its eyes shone a blue color, but again, even this creature did not dare to approach the tree fully. The crane flew up from the branch it was perched on and circled the skies above the tree. It didn't get too close to the peach, despite its obvious desire for it. The big black bear stood up on its hind legs, staring at the peach like all the rest. It did not venture a single step forward either. Han Sen watched how all the creatures grew more and more impatient. They greatly desired the peach, but they were conflicted with a fear that prohibited them from going forward. Han Sen was surprised by the scene, and it made him even more puzzled over the nature of the bugs. Where did they come from to possess such power that they frightened the super creatures? After a while, the wonder of the fruit's delightful scent reached its zenith, and the red mist that the peach emitted cloaked the entire fruit and began to resemble a holy light. The peach had become transparent, and Han Sen could see how juicy it was on the inside. The temptation to sink his teeth into it, regardless of the prospect of subsequent death, was real. That afternoon, the peach began to shine. A symbol, composed of light, appeared on its skin. At that moment, the bugs went crazy and washed up the tree like the tide of the sea. Like a shadow, they ascended all the way to the peach. They were like a murky liquid cloud. If he looked closer, he could see the vast swarms of bugs that pushed and squeezed together in a bustle to reach the peach. Despite watching the peach fall into the hands of the bugs, the super creatures still hesitated. Han Sen gritted his teeth, summoned his wings and Rex Spike, and took off towards the peach. Han Sen's movement was like the tipping of the first domino. The pink snake screamed and leapt towards the peach, alongside its legion of other snakes. The blue beast roared, moved its 4 limbs, and raced up towards the peach. The crane was like an arrow, descending from the sky, aimed at the peach. The black bear and its cub roared to the sky and jumped towards the tree. Their fear of the bugs was still apparent, but they weren't willing to let the peach go that easily. The bugs were aware of Han Sen and the super creatures coming towards them, so they rustled their little wings and took off like black smoke. They came out of the bark like a murky cloud, ready for a dogfight with the creatures. Han Sen swung his flaming Rex Spike, and fire incinerated swarms of the wretched bugs, which rained down to the ground like a hail of fire. They weren't killed, but they could no longer fly. There were far more bugs beyond the ones that were hit, however, and many more weaved their way around Han Sen's Rex Spike. The bugs were too small, and a weapon like the Rex Spike could not easily block them. Suddenly, the silver fox screeched as it lay on Han Sen's shoulder. A bolt of silver lightning incinerated the bugs that were coming for its master. Han Sen was thankful for the silver fox. Again, he swung his Rex Spike to break the mist of bugs and went forward to grab the peach. Other creatures did the same. Although the number of bugs was incomprehensible, none had managed to damage any of the super creatures. But even though Han Sen was the one who went first, the crane was still faster. The crane had managed to fly directly in front of the peach, and it used its beak to try to peck it from the twig it clung to. Pang! The black bugs gathered up together like a big black hand and slapped the intruding crane, which knocked it away a dozen meters. It took a moment to regather its composure and balance in the air. The bugs in front of Han Sen were like that, as well. They swarmed together to resemble a black beast and attempted to strike him. Han Sen and the silver fox then cooperated to take down the black beast, brought to life through the unison of black bugs. Han Sen sliced through their formation, which forced the bugs to split. But they formed back together a second later, resuming their beast-like shape, intent on murdering Han Sen. The same thing was occurring with the black bears, too. Their ascent was hindered by the black bugs, and they found themselves unable to reach the peach because of them. The black bugs gathered together to become a flying animal or beast that could soar the skies. And their numbers grew and grew, buzzing everywhere, attacking every creature pining for the peach. The black bugs formed a big hand next, which gripped the tree. It clawed its way up, heading towards the peaches. The crane wasn't very happy after it got slapped. It cawed with rage and flapped its wings frantically to birth a frightening tornado. The creepy shapes of animals formed by the bugs, and the black hand that sought to steal the peaches, were sucked into it. The black bugs were flushed into the tornado and carried far away. The tornado was discolored, and it looked black. The number of bugs present in there was sickening to imagine. The crane then saw its opportunity to grab the peach, so it picked up speed and flew back. But before the crane could peck the peach free for itself, the sound of shattering would ring out. A black hole formed in the side of the tree, and a fist-sized black bug exited from within. It looked like a 7-spotted ladybug, but its head was far bigger, and it was entirely black. Its wings glittered translucent gold. The bug came out from the hole and flapped its golden wings, generating a bright light. Then it buzzed directly in front of the crane, striking one of its wings. Catcha! The super creature's tough hide and feathers were torn into by the ravenous bug. The bug latched onto the crane's wing, and it drove its teeth deep into the wing with a wide-open mouth. A chunk of the crane's wing was ripped off, exposing its bones beneath the fresh gush of blood. The crane let out an upset cry, and it flapped its wings the best it could to kick up a sharp blade-like wind. It couldn't do anything to the black bug, however. The wind struck the black bug with a sound like the ringing of a bell. Unfazed by the attack, the bug dug back into the crane's wings, hungrily munching on its flesh. The crane cried with sadness again. It flapped its wings to fly higher, but its ascent was slow because of the one ravaged wing. Try as it might, it could not escape the gold-winged bug's attack. Han Sen's head felt numb, watching this. But he knew it was the chance he needed to grab the holy peach, and that was where he went. The gold-winged bug had been drawn to the sky by the crane, and this was Han Sen's best chance to grab the peach. But something was faster than Han. Senator the pink snake was using its legion of snakes for cover, and he didn't know when it had managed to get so close. The small snake was thin like a chopstick, yet when it opened its mouth, it was wide enough to swallow the entire peach. Seeing the peach about to be swallowed by the pink snake, another gold shadow emerged from the hole in the tree. In one smack, the pink snake was sent flying. It was another gold-winged ladybug. It grabbed a hold of the pink snake and bared its teeth, ready to sink them right into the slithering fiend. But the pink snake's body released some red mist like the peach. The bug let go and staggered away, looking dizzy. The pink snake used this opportunity to escape from the gold-winged bug. But when the bug snapped out of its daze, it went right back after the snake. At that moment, Han Sen noticed another 2 gold-winged ladybugs emerge from the hole inside the tree. This gave him quite the shock. There were more than 2 gold-winged ladybugs now, bugs that were almost as strong as the super creatures, for had exited the hole, and heaven knew how many more might still reside within. Of the 2 additional gold-winged ladybugs, one targeted the blue beast, whereas the other targeted Han Sen. Han Sen gritted his teeth, flapped his wings, and fell back a bit. He wasn't sure whether or not there were any more inside the hole, so he didn't dare attack. If he did, he might miss his chance at getting the peach. The gold-winged ladybug was coming towards Han Sen, and in response, Han Sen swung his Rex spike at the gold shadow. But the bug was too nimble, and it evaded the attack with ease. It continued onwards at full speed. The silver fox looked angry in response, as all the hair on its body stood up. Lightning cracked and sparkled across his coat of fur, which emitted a bolt of lightning that jumped towards the oncoming foe. The gold-winged ladybug flapped its wings to evade the silver fox's attack and continued its buzzing pursuit of Han Sen. It was too late to lift the Rex spike again, and his heart quickly jumped. The peacock crossbow appeared in his hand, and with it, he smacked the bug that was coming to devour him. Pang! The peacock crossbow and the gold-winged ladybug collided. A terrible force was transferred to Han Sen's hand, however, and he was sent spiraling. He was knocked a few dozen meters away but managed to keep his balance. His hand was bleeding, and it felt numb. That is some scary power. That little creepy crawly isn't any weaker than the average super creature. Han Sen was shocked, but he quickly took notice of the gold-winged ladybug, resuming its pursuit of him. Han Sen and the silver fox fought the ladybug together, but still, they were at a disadvantage. Han Sen had to use his really good senses, powered by the Dongshin Sutra, but even with the silver fox's help, he was barely able to maintain his competition with it. It was difficult to see who was winning the battle that was raging between the other gold-winged ladybug and the blue beast. He could sometimes catch a glimpse of a blue flash that would follow the occasional roar. The big and small bear used this opportunity to break the black bug's barrier. They ascended the peach tree as best they could, and with their thick fur and hide, had no fear of the bugs biting them. When they arrived near the peach, their bodies were black, covered in the nibbling insects. But this time, the big bear had a plan. It stared at the hole in the tree while allowing the little bear to gather the peach. There was more movement from inside, and indeed, something else was ready to emerge. But this time, it was not a gold-winged ladybug. It was a ladybug that was plated entirely in gold. Its head was twice the size of the other gold-winged ladybugs. It flapped its gold wings and shot out of the hole towards the bear cub like a gold shadow. The black bear roared and used its claws to try to grab the golden ladybug. But it was too fast, and with its rapid wings, it evaded the bear's paws and continued on to the cub. The big bear roared, as if it was alerting the cub. But the cub, almost having reached the peach, didn't want to give up. It extended its paws and tried to grab it. Pang! The golden ladybug hit the cub, and it fell off the tree. It created a big hole in the ground when it landed. From below, the cub cried out in pain. The big bear no longer cared about the peach, and so it jumped down from the tree, roaring with anger as it chased after the golden ladybug. It was going to save the cub from danger. Han Sen was frozen. He wondered what the bug might have been, and it seemed to be of the same breed as the gold-winged ladybug. One thing was for certain, however, it was far stronger. The two bears were fighting against it, but they weren't winning. The bug's mouth was extremely sharp, and even the obsidian-strong fur of the bears could not withstand its bites. The cub was peppered with wounds from the insect assaulter, but fortunately, none were deadly. The black bear's claws smacked the golden ladybug's shell with a mighty slap, but nothing broke. Furthermore, it appeared entirely unfazed. The two bears were being ravaged as they did battle with the golden ladybug, and throughout this entire time, none had the free space or time to grab the peach. Now unopposed, the smaller black bugs resumed their shape as a hand and tried to grab the peach again. Excitement glistened in Han Sen's eyes. He clenched his jaws and summoned the AUDIOBOOK. A holy body cracked the air and perched itself atop the tree. It swung its transparent greatsword and severed the hand that had been formed by the black bugs. As she did this, she used her other hand to grab the peach. But when the AUDIOBOOK tried to pull it, she could not get the peach free. Her eyes turned cold, and she swung her greatsword to detach the peach from the twig it stubbornly clung to. When she did this, the peach finally came free in her hand. Han Sen was happy, seeing this. There were no other bugs coming out of the hole in the tree, so it looked like 5 was all of them. And now, the holy peach was in the AUDIOBOOK's hand. Han Sen's hand jumped, and he ordered the AUDIOBOOK to leave the area. Otherwise, if she was noticed to be holding the peach, she'd become enemy number 1 for every super creature in the forest. Boom! The AUDIOBOOK flapped its wings and shot off into the sky. Then the 5 ladybugs and the super creatures did indeed turn their attention to the AUDIOBOOK. They all roared, screamed, and screeched with a desire to tear the AUDIOBOOK apart. They went after her. Han Sen saw this, so he gritted his teeth and pulled out his Rex spike. He traveled to the other peach, the one that hadn't fully ripened yet. He had never expected there to be 5 super creature ladybugs guarding the fruit. He was fortunate that the AUDIOBOOK had managed to pluck the peach when it did. If he came back for this one when it was ripe, however, he was unsure whether or not he'd be able to get it. If they were aware the AUDIOBOOK belonged to Han Sen, and he was the one who had obtained it, the other creatures would be especially wary of him. The 5 golden ladybugs were too powerful for him to fight, and he didn't want to risk his life any further. If he wasn't going to risk his life again, he thought he might as well grab the other peach while he was there. Even though it wasn't entirely ripe just yet, it had to be useful somehow. Perhaps it would be less efficient, but it was better than nothing. Han Sen rushed to the top of the tree, raised his Rex spike, and tried to cut down the lower holy peach that had not yet fully ripened. But suddenly, he was alerted by something, and a cold chill ran down his spine. Han Sen pulled back quickly and saw a red flash pass by his head. It was the pink snake, back for vengeance. Han Sen's body was drenched in a sudden cold sweat. The pink snake did not chase after the AUDIOBOOK and had instead stayed behind to get Han's senator. Fortunately, he had a strong sense, strong enough to dodge the sudden sneak attack. If he hadn't evaded it, the pink snake would undoubtedly be squirming its way inside his ear by now. Thinking about what happened to the bone elephant, Han Sen couldn't help but feel his head itch. The pink snake missed its attack and rebounded off a tree branch, leaping towards Han Sen once more. Han Sen and the silver fox now dealt with the pink snake together, but it robbed them of the opportunity to grab the holy peach. The silver fox was too young. If it had grown up a little more, it might have been able to deal with the pink snake by itself. Han Sen would have been able to grab the peach while the snake was kept busy. Right now, they both were struggling to keep up with the pink snake. The heavy weapon, the Rex spike, was too slow against it and was ineffective to wield. Han Sen wanted to summon the AUDIOBOOK back, but she was holding the peach. If she was re-summoned back through the Sea of Soul, the peach could not come with her. The legion of snakes now attacked from all directions, and with the black bugs in tow, the place was in chaos. Han Sen tried to shake off the pink snake a few times but couldn't. In fact, he almost inhaled the red mist that the snake emitted. Not long after, he heard the buzzing of flying insects arrive. The few ladybugs that went after the AUDIOBOOK were now returning, having given up their pursuit. The blue beast and the 2 bears also returned. Aside from the crane, they had all come back. Han Sen, acknowledging how frantic the situation had become, could only retreat. The 5 ladybugs hadn't just come back to the area, however. They had come back to go after Han Sen alone. Without thinking, Han Sen chose to run. If he couldn't deal with one, there was no chance he could take on 5. The 5 ladybugs came towards him, clearly aware that Han Sen was the Adorade's master. To get the peach, they now thought it best to slay the master who was in control of it. Han Sen wished he could grow more legs. He ran as fast as he could, but the ladybugs behind him were flying faster. They were quickly gaining on him. The silver fox squealed, and it brewed a charge of silver lightning. The lightning looked like a spider web as it fired towards the 5 ladybugs. The 4 gold-winged ladybugs came into contact with the electric net. They convulsed and became numb with the charge, which caused their pursuit to slow down. But the big golden ladybug was not affected by the discharge, and it flew just as fast as ever. Han Sen's heart almost leapt out of his chest. He knew the strength of the golden ladybug after watching the 2 bears' inability to deal with it and their subsequent multitude of wounds. There was no way Han Sen and the silver fox could ever dream of repelling it. Seeing the golden ladybug giving close pursuit, Han Sen cast a skill that would enable him to dodge it. He hoped that the movement would sustain his life a little bit longer. The golden ladybug was too fast, however, and the gold shadow flashed to tear Han Sen's shoulder open with a deep cut. It was so deep that the shoulder bone was exposed, and it was bleeding badly. Han Sen was still conflicted on whether or not he should summon the Adorade back. If he didn't, he wondered if it was only a matter of time before he and the silver fox were killed. But suddenly, the golden ladybug turned its attention away from them and flew away. Han Sen was surprised, but he understood why it had left them be. He looked back towards the mystic tree and saw the pink snake open its maw wide, preparing to bite the not-yet-ripe peach. Observing the carnage and the return of the golden ladybug to the tree, the 2 bears ran away in fear. Seeing the 2 bears bail, Han Sen understood there was no hope in remaining. He turned around and headed in the direction the Adorade had gone. Without the 2 bears there, only the pink snake and blue beast remained. Even with Han Sen and the silver fox, there was no way they could fight off the 5 ladybugs. With the hate and contempt they harbored for Han Sen in particular, he was aware that any return to the area would quickly result in death. It would be suicide. He wanted to quickly retrieve the peach from the Adorade. With only the crane chasing her, he was sure he'd be able to get the peach from her. As expected, before Han Sen reached the Adorade, it could see the crane in hot pursuit. It screeched, gliding on the air, summoning strong winds. Then, it went up above the clouds. It left little blood droplets, suggesting it had been injured. Han Sen saw the shadow of the Adorade in the distance, which now turned towards Han's senator. It looked as if she was chasing the injured crane. But the crane was one with the wind, and now it was long gone. Even the Adorade could not catch up with it. Han Sen took the juicy peach from the Adorade's hand and was filled with sublime happiness. He carefully placed it in a bag he had prepared for it and quickly left the forest. With the 5 ladybugs guarding the peaches, Han Sen was lucky to get one. He knew this, and he knew it was best for him not to return and risk the greed of trying to nab the second. Han Sen thought the lower peach was guaranteed to be secured by the 5 ladybugs. He did not think that the pink snake and the blue beast stood a chance against them. One thing Han Sen did not understand, however, was the relationship between the golden ladybug and the smaller, gold-winged ladybugs. They were actual super creatures, not some black bugs that had been created as a form of weapon. If the golden ladybug gave birth to the 4 gold-winged ladybugs, then the second generation would be stronger than the mother. But this was not so, because the golden ladybug was evidently stronger than the other 4. But no matter what their relationship was, or what it suggested, Han Sen couldn't care less right now. All he wanted to do was return to the Crystal Palace where it was safe. There, he could safely dine on the Holy Peach and practice his Dongxian Sutra. Perhaps he could finish his first tier now, which was his ultimate goal. Fortunately, his return trip was uneventful, and he reached the Crystal Palace safe and sound. He pulled out the peach from his pockets, and the whole Crystal Palace suddenly smelled of a wonderful, fruity scent. A holy light caressed the peach, and its transparent skin was a thin membrane separating the outside world and the divine carnival of juices within. The pleasant scent could not be held back by the skin. The silver fox opened its jaw and leapt to the peach, attempting to swallow it whole. But Han Sen was well prepared for this, and so he commanded the adderade to hold onto the silver fox. No matter how much it struggled, and struggle it did, it would not be getting a lick of this peach. Haha, I'm sorry, silver fox, but this peach is mine. Why don't you go eat some candy or something? Han Sen brought out a Geno creation pill to feed the silver fox. The silver fox loved eating a Geno creation pill each and every day, but now it did not even look at it. All the silver fox wanted was that glorious peach.